Hello, all you patrons. Welcome to another pre-show. Gather round.
Gather round indeed and enjoy the waning summer while you can, because unless you live in SoCal, where September is often the hottest of the month, the hottest month of the year, unless you live there, August means that summer is lurching toward its end. Late August, I mean.
I went for a walk today, and I didn't look at what store I was, whether it was a party store or what, but I saw Halloween decoration stuff out the window in Sierra Madre on
Oh
Sierra Madre
yes,
Boulevard. So, did or did did, did your did somebody win already? Even before this week?
actually, somebody already has. Dan Devine sent me a picture of about a week ago, I think, of a Halloween store with its Halloween retail stuff.
Wow,
So he wins this year.
isn't he in upstate New York or something?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, the Hudson River Valley, Hudson Islands.
yeah. Wow.
But I mean, frankly, as I've often said, I'm of two minds about the ever creeping Halloween and then Christmas decorations. Because on the one hand, of course, I'd prefer they be done in season. But on the other hand, life in general, on one level, and the heat of summer on the other, are such that I love to be reminded, A, of cooler weather, and B, of festive occasions. And I do think, quite apart from the desires of our retail community to cash in as early as they can, I do think the response on the part of the public is because a lot of people want to get into Halloween and Christmas and Thanksgiving and escape the horrors of the present by a launch back into the joys of yesteryear, which holidays certainly, I mean, quite a quite apart, and yet in addition to the specific reason for the holiday, whether it be Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Um, in addition, and apart from that, the jump into nostalgia is very powerful.
Hmm. It's interesting, thinking about the calendar on that in that manner. I bet uh I think TSL is right. Spring is the cruelest season. Didn't he say that in Wasteland?
Yeah,
Um
he did.
because I feel like so summer isn't bad. I feel like for a lot of people, especially with families, cuz like they're doing vacations, they're thinking about where they're going. Are they going to Hawaii? Are they doing this trip? So it's like there's that to look forward to. And then you enter the holiday season, quote unquote. But spring, I feel like Easter doesn't excite people in the same way. Um,
Well, it doesn't. I think part of it is simply because, well, there are different things in different places. If you've got, if you have a real winter, then spring is very exciting,
oh, I see.
and people do get excited about that. But in Southern California,
Yeah.
where you're from and where I've spent the vast majority of my life, spring is just the waiting period for the heat of summer.
Yes.
It's sort of a dead zone between the joys of quote unquote the holiday season, which also you'll notice tends to expand these days. People keep their Christmas lights up longer and longer,
Yeah.
even past the Epiphany now.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so they try to make it last. Having started it before Halloween, they 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 try to keep it going as long as possible. But then you have this long nothing season until the summer, and then again, summer is vacation. But if you're not going on vacation, if you're just sitting there in Los Angeles, you're going to be baked,
Yeah.
and that's just not smart. Not smart. It's just not fun.
Yeah.
Uh, and you don't. I mean, one of the things, I had not been in the Northeast for such a long time until 2014, the time we left there. Uh, and I spent the spring of 2014 in Connecticut, and I remembered what I'd forgotten, which was the progression of the flowers after the snow melts. Because you get snowdrops, then you get daffodils, then you get tulips, and then finally the roses. And the
Hmm.
roses are the harbingers of summer. But the tulips, when they're in season in the Northeast, especially in the Hudson Valley, oh my heavens! Um, I never really cared too much about tulips one way or the other because in California you've got flowers all the time. It's not even like Florida where it's green all year, but you don't have flowers all year.
Yeah.
In California, because our flowers come from everywhere, their little genes are making them blossom in response to wherever they came from. That's why you have the jacaranda trees in Arcadia and Monrovia with their beautiful purple flowers. Well, they're doing that because genetically they're still sitting in South Africa.
Interesting. Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so I was at a wedding. I've just gotten back from a wedding in rural Austria, and it was filled. It was a great wedding. Good friend of mine got married, um, and I had a great time. But his family are farmers, and they've actually been in the same farmhouse since 1515, which is a long time.
The same farmhouse?
Hmm. Yep.
That's the longest time I've ever heard a family to be in the same house.
Not atypical in Europe.
That must be an amazing house. I can
It's
imagine all
well,
the
it's
love and care and you know.
yeah, and it's been. I mean, if you look at it from the outside, it's big. It's not a mansion. It's a substantial farmhouse,
Yeah.
and it's obviously been well cared for. And again, if your first thought, it's not like a castle. You step inside, your first thing is, my gosh, this is old. It's comfortable. I mean, it's been kept up and altered and changed all that time, but they've been in the same spot since 1515, and the wedding was at a church called Maria Pfarr in a town called Maria Pfarr, which is a shrine. But the parish priest there, Father Moore, was the man who composed Silent Night, the words to
Yeah.
Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht, not the tune. And the tune I think was by somebody called Gruber, but he composed the words, and that's the big thing in the town of Maria Pfarr. But at any rate, when we had breakfast with the family at the house, and then we were going down the hill to drive off to Maria Pfarr, and we were suddenly surrounded by people in weird costumes. There was a guy in a dirndl with a beard. There was a guy dressed as a nun. There were women dressed in all kinds of weird things. They stopped the car, and they pulled open our doors. They were trying to pull us out. I said, "Wait, hold on, hold on." So we had to give the money, which I found out later went to the bride and groom. And in return, they gave us piles of sticks and bunches of pine cones and bottles of Jägermeister. Serious, it was the most bizarre thing, but it's a regular custom in that part of the world. And then off we
Jägermeister?
went, Jägermeister. And then off we went. Well, there were other things too, but Jägermeister is what they gave us out of this sack. Off we drove. The wedding was beautiful, and then we had the reception afterwards, and then the dinner. And after the dinner, there was dancing. Well, the first songs were all waltzes and polkas and so on, which were great. Then they did some American tunes, like "It Never Rains in Southern California." This is live, and it's sung in English, and the games people play songs like that, which I was having flashbacks when I first heard them. And then when that was finished, some local people, including the groom's brother, started playing, and they had four male dancers do these folk dances with slapping their thighs and so forth. But at one point, the four of them brought these two big benches and they crossed them,
Hmm.
and they jumped on top of them and started doing this slap dance. You had to do it just right because it's a narrow bench. You do it wrong and you're going to go flying,
Yeah.
and not in a nice way.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the most astonishing thing. It was like Morris dancing with, slapping. But it was really amazing. It was a very, very, very deep Austrian, uh, and it was a great time. It was a great time, and I'm very happy I was there, and I wish them, as you can imagine, a long life and many children, and a lot of happiness.
Hmm. Yeah, you talk about flashbacks. Just hearing about polka gives me flashbacks because I used to encounter that a lot. 30 years ago at my grandparents' 50th anniversary back in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. The polka was a huge thing over there with the Slovaks, and so it's sort of crystallized in my memory in that, I don't know, that old timey way of things, I guess. So they still have so polka's just alive and over there,
Though it's
and
alive and well and danced by young people. And not only that,
wow.
well, I went to a Polish wedding back in 2003 in Cleveland. Very good friend of mine. He's not Polish, but he married a lovely Polish girl, and they polked. I mean, and I was a lot spry then. So the next morning, we went to the Tridentine Mass at St. Rose's in Cleveland, and I start walking up to receive communion, and my legs aren't working right. I didn't quite understand why. And then I had a sudden flashback on the night before when I'd been polkaing, all right. And, leaping across the floor, okay, now I get it, sure.
Wow.
But yeah, for a long time, one of the leading music shows on Cleveland television was called Polka, Polka, Polka.
I believe it.
There's a lot to be said for, ethnic traditions and so on.
Yeah.
We have a similar one, in Southern California. We have a lot of Southern California ethnic traditions.
Yeah. All right.
Now you see, you see how you are.
How I am is smart by moving on to the questions and getting
You're afraid.
Making it a little.
You're afraid you're about to go down a rabbit hole, aren't you?
I'm not afraid. I am navigating this show and I'm saying, oh, there's an obstacle here. We probably should keep on track. Let's stay on the road.
It's an invitation.
It's an invitation.
And I'll tell you. I remember, not this summer, but a couple of summers ago, maybe, a friend of mine has a place up in Lake Tahoe, and I was up there. Lake Tahoe is a wonderful, wonderful place. And there were all his local friends were there. We're having lunch, I guess. It was really nice outdoors. And one of the guests was the local parish priest. Well, we're chatting, and I said, tell me, Father, this is a true story, by the way, just so you'll know. Because apropos of our pre-show conversation, you might think I made it up for the purpose. I didn't. It's a true story. I said, well, where were you here? Where were you before you were here at Lake Tahoe, Father? And he says, oh, I was out Mount Shasta. And I said, really? How many of your congregation were Lemurians? And he started roaring with laughter. And of course, nobody else at the table had any idea what we were talking about. And the poor man laughed so hard he could barely speak. And they all looked at me. I said, well, I don't know. I just.
Wow. All right. Well, that was a good one, Charles.
Yeah, I thought so. I was very, very happy. You see, the key to that kind of humor is when you're with a lot of people and you say something to someone that only that person will get. And they're paralyzed with laughter while everyone else thinks they've just gone crazy.
Yeah, I remember that kind of advice from you. I always remember if I ever meet a celebrity to talk about a film or a song that's obscure, that like 50 people, or hundreds of people, like obviously if you see Peter Jackson, you're not going to talk about Lord of the Rings. You're gonna talk about the Frighteners or King Kong or something.
Yeah, exactly. The Frighteners would be the best.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to, and you have to praise it too. The Frighteners really changed my view of cinema completely.
Yeah, exactly.
it's just the way it is. Anyhow, all
Yeah.
right, fine. So you avoided the rabbit hole. Be
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. All right. Questions time. First question's from Brian, who says, Charles, to what extent was the secret treaty of Dover between Charles II and Louis XIV carried out? As I understand it, Charles was to become a Catholic and support France against Holland in return for money. This would also have made him less dependent on Parliament, though likely also unpopular with his subjects. It seems to be another tantalizing what if of history.
Well, I mean, they did fight the Dutch War, didn't they? So it's not like he didn't do anything in terms of maintaining the treaty. And he did become a Catholic on his deathbed, although from everything we can tell, that was an act of conscience and not of policy.
Hmm.
Um, Charles II, like Louis XVIII of France, 100 and some years later, 150 years later, had a very difficult role to play because, on the one hand, he had to pretend that nothing had changed since his father's day. That the restoration was when the monarchy was restored, he had to pretend it was restored as it had been. The reality, of course, was quite different. The reality was that he was brought back by a faction of the people who had destroyed his father. And this meant that he had to be very, very careful with what he did and how he maneuvered. Probably the happiest time England had known since the Marian restoration of the 1550s was King Charles's 11 years of personal rule without Parliament. And since that time, it's all been downhill, Chillins.
But it's been such a fun slide, like the sack slide at a fiesta.
No,
Oh,
it's not been fun.
all right.
It's been down a rabbit hole. And you know what's down at the bottom of that rabbit hole? The modern non-Tory Conservative Party of today. See, in Britain, you have woke scumbag party A that we call LIBA, putting the lie into LIBA. And then we have woke scumbag party B that we call the Conservatives. And the only thing that they have to say, that B have to say for themselves, is that we're not A. We'll give you the same poison, only more slowly. Does that sound familiar from other countries' politics?
Yeah, I don't know United Kingdom politics too well, so that's similar to Democrat Republican, right?
And it's similar to just about everywhere in the Western world.
Yeah.
The quote-unquote Conservative Party have become just, we're not going to poison you as quickly and you won't feel it quite as badly. And if you don't vote for us, you're going to get them and you're going to have all the garbage now. But the problem is that you are getting the garbage now.
Yeah.
So you've got garbage party A and garbage party B. With the Republicans, the Trumpster gave a certain amount of relief. But, it is what it is, what it is, what it is. I don't know how much it will take in Britain or France or Spain or the United States or anywhere before people have had enough. Is 2 years old too young or not old enough to be given trans information?
Yeah, Charles was saying this before the show. 2 years old isn't a person who's 2 years old. They're saying should be given trans information because that's when it starts and blah, blah, blah.
How about trans information is when the parent gets smacked around? How about that? Child abuse is a terrible, terrible crime. And I have to say, this is apropos of nothing, except that it's come up in Britain quite a bit, and the question was about Britain. It's all a question of grooming. It really is. And you hear that, and then you hear people say, "Oh, you shouldn't say that." You must say, "Well, if words mean anything, what do they mean?" Oh, there was this other thing in Britain today. I don't have my hands on it, but this woman has been cautioned by the law because she was unkind to pedophiles. When did pedophiles become a protected minority?
Well, I mean, well, the crux of this is, what does unkind mean?
I don't know. I suppose saying it's a bad thing to expose your children to them?
You can't have that opinion. That opinion is punished by law.
Apparently not. At least not in Britain under the current Conservative Party.
Hmm. Okay. Moving on.
Not that we're bitter.
You're trying to make me bitter. I'm a happy person. I don't read the news. I don't watch the news. I stay off social media, and you're trying to infect me like a liberal
Have you?
infects people.
Oh yeah. Have you
Yeah,
ever considered vacationing in Lemuria?
that would be the ideal getaway spot, wouldn't
I would think so.
it?
Trans-Universe Airlines. Oh no, we can't call we
Yeah,
can't say
that's
trans. Well, what can we use beyond to speak?
pan universe.
No, that would be this universe. Well, we're talking about going to a different one.
Okay.
It's hard.
uh, I don't know.
Anyway, what if you're tired of this universe? Shouldn't you get some kind of a, you're sick and tired of the way things are run here. Everything's screwed up, and you refuse to accept it. Shouldn't society be forced to construct a safe space for you?
Yes.
All right, we got that done. What's
Yes.
next?
Great. Robert has a question. Says, "Greetings, Charles and the Book Baron. Hope things are swell and dandy where you are. I have a question for Charles regarding the sovereign franchise. Some say those who wield it must have demonstrated responsibility and service before earning it, via some sort of national service of a military or non-military nature. Some say those who wield it must possess long term and communal interest in order to be prudent about it, like owning land, being married, and having children above replacement level, etc. Some still say it should be those who demonstrate competences that are essential to the state, like military experience, being a successful businessman with many employees, etc. I'd like to know what you think about it. What is the history of the franchise, and what was its original purpose or nature as far as it is relevant to sovereignty? As always, God bless and keep you all in Tumbler House."
Well, the franchise as we know it basically comes to us from the medieval estates of the realm, which in Britain turned into Parliament, the House of Lords, and the House of Commons. Now, what do these organizations exist for? Well, basically, what they existed for was if the king needed more money and or troops, that is to say conscripts, it was up to the people who were taxed to come up with it, to come up with the money and or the people. And so the idea was that those who would vote who would be represented were those who would be taxed, those who would be expected to come up with the stuff. Well, who were these people? Well, depending on the country you were in, there were 3 or 4 kinds: the clergy, the nobility, the commoners, and these were landowners and or well-to-do merchants. And in some places, the commoners were split into 2 different estates, agricultural and urban. And basically, these are the people who were supposed to come up with the dough. And so it was presumed that they were the ones who would be represented whenever the sovereign needed dough, extra dough beyond what his own estates brought him. Because you got to bear in mind that usually in the Middle Ages, what royal government there was paid for by the king out of his own pocket, and that pocket was filled with what came out of his own estates. To this day, for example, in Britain, the Crown Estate, which is legally the Queen's estates, are over 80% more than the money that's actually expended on the upkeep of the monarchy. So in days gone by, she would have been expected to support the whole of the government not just with the 20% that is the upkeep of the monarchy itself, the palaces and everything else, but the remaining 80%, which today just gets plowed into Parliament. It's like paying 80% taxes, basically. But that money, from that money, she would be expected to finance everything. Now, which was why governments were very small, because there just wasn't that much money there. Now, mind you, there were other sorts of things that she could charge. Ship money, which was money on the sort of, how do you call it? It was a kind of a tax on the manufacture of ships. Uh, the kings in England, anyway, would charge people who were being knighted. They would charge them a certain amount of money for being knighted, things like that. But basically, that was what they were supposed to finance the thing out of. The reason why, I mentioned earlier King Charles's period of governing without Parliament. Well, the reason why he had to call Parliament was because of the Scottish War. Because the Scottish War meant that he would have to raise an army, he'd have to fight the Scots, and that would mean he had to go to Parliament for unexpected funding, for more money than normal. It was a system that, on the one hand, if you're a libertarian, I guess you'd love it, because it certainly kept the central government from growing very big, but it did have a way of promoting a certain amount of anarchy. And in the Middle Ages, this wasn't all that bad, in the sense that everybody was more or less, they had the same ideology. So differences had more to do with family and personality than they had to do with ideology, unless you had armed heretics of some kind. But after the Reformation, ideology entered into it. And that was why, although you had civil wars, not least the War of the Roses, in English history and the history of other European countries, they didn't really change the nature of the state very much. They just changed whomever the king might be, which was not that, it was a big enough change if you were part of the royal family who were deposed or the ones who came on top, but it was not that big of a change as far as the actual conduct of the state went. But once the Reformation brought in ideological differences, then everything altered.
I see.
So now you know.
Interesting.
But as far to answer the question, in modern times, obviously people have noticed with the gradual introduction of universal suffrage, of everybody being able to vote, it has become noticed by some people that if the majority don't have that much, they can vote to take money from those who do. In other words, well, I mean, I'll
No,
give you an
I mean,
example.
well, that's what's happened, right? I mean, everybody's.
When as someone has said, I forget who, democracy ends when people realize they can vote themselves other people's money.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, to give you an example, I don't own anything. All right, I don't own a house. So as a result, on bond issues, I always vote no, even if I agree with whatever the bond's being raised for. The reason why I vote no is that it's the property owners, the property taxpayers, who pay for the bond issues.
Yeah.
Now, that being the case, I don't think it moral for me to vote yes on a bond issue, because I'm not putting into it.
No.
Now, you own property, so if there's a state bond issue or a county bond issue, and I vote yes, I am voting to increase your property tax, but I don't pay property tax.
Yeah.
And to me, that's wrong.
No, you're preaching to the choir, Charles. No, I totally want to eliminate universal suffrage. I feel like just a governing board of
Yeah,
significant
I mean, kind of like the
landholders.
one at Tubler House. Yeah, I know. But what I would say is that there should be differing. I mean, if we're left to me, there would be, depending upon the issue being voted upon, there would be differing franchises. And I take this as an example. I think that only property owners should be able to vote on bond issues. Now, the question has been played with the idea of restricting the suffrage and then allowing people who've served in the military or who've done this, who've done that, who has, as the fellow says, proved their use to the state. Those are all, I mean, they're not unreasonable ideas. What I do think is unreasonable is what we have now. It is the idea that just by virtue of breathing, you could vote even if you don't put in. I don't think that's right. I believe that I'm all for universal suffrage, for instance, as regards sales taxes, anything that would increase sales taxes. Why? Because everybody pays for those. So if the city of Los Angeles wants to do something or other that's going to cost a 3-cent rise in sales taxes, yeah, sure, everybody should vote for that because everybody's going to pay it. It goes back again to what the franchise was created for in the first place, but not with property taxes.
Okay, I'm gonna leave the pre-show there for now. That's all the questions we have on the pre-show today.
That is a short pre-show.
It was over 30 minutes, Charles.
Over 30. Gosh, our patrons are going to be screaming for more. Do you think maybe I should read my 40-page ode to spring in blank verse right now to give them, to relax them and let them feel that we're not short-sheeting them?
Absolutely. You go ahead and do that. I'm going to go out and go to the spa.
Never mind. All right.
Yeah, you're not interested in that unless you can punish. How sick is that you write poetry to punish people?
I do not write poetry to punish people. In fact, to show you what a lie that is and how wrong you are, I'm going to quote my mother's all-purpose beatnik poetry that she composed in the style of the beatniks of the 50s. And you tell me if this would be punishment. Now, I'm only going to give you 2 short stanzas, okay? But imagine I'm doing 30 or 40 of them.
Okay.
Also, you've got to imagine there's someone with bongo drums doing the beat in the back.
Okay.
All right, you with me so far?
Yeah.
All right. Little bird with her beak pressed up against the pet shop window. There is no bird seed for you today, only death. Little boy with your nose pressed up against the candy shop window. There are no jelly beans for you today, only death. There. Now why would you consider that punishment? I don't have an answer.
I was not saying poetry is inherently designed to punish. I was saying your poetry is inherently designed to punish, excluding
really?
White Cockade.
Really?
Yeah.
The White Cockade was written to punish.
No, excluding. I said excluding.
All right.
But you've grown old. You've grown cynical. You want to give people a taste of their own medicine. So yeah, Ode to Spring. Yeah, 50 minutes.
You know what? I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do, because you're so mean to me after all I've been through, I'm going to give you an E.E. Cummings poem. That'll fix you.
I think I know which one you're going to do, actually.
What's that?
I think I know which one you're going to do, actually.
Well, we'll see. Let's see. Here it is. Yes. It's called In Just. In just spring, when the world is mud luscious, the little lame balloon man whistles far and wee, And Eddie and Bill come running from marbles and piracies, and it's spring, when the world is puddle wonderful. The queer old balloon man whistles far and wee, and Betty and Isabel come dancing from hopscotch and jump rope, and it's spring, and the goat-footed balloon man whistles far and wee.
Wow, I like that poem a lot, actually. Is that
You
like the
like that?
is that like the straw men or the hollow men or like the we are the hollow men?
No,
We
that's T.S. Eliot.
yeah. So
It's like E. E. Cummings. Well, it's modernist poetry. I mean, that's what they call it. I'm not. I don't mean it's condemned by St. Pius X. That's
yeah,
not what I mean.
yeah.
They
Uh,
call it. But that fine. You're gonna be like that.
yeah.
I'll give you another one from somebody else. Since you bring up T.S. Eliot,
Okay.
um, this is actually, all kidding aside, I'm not much of a modernist. I can read the whole poem either; it's too long. But
What did you say? I heard all I heard is you're not much of a modernist.
I am not much of a lover of modernist poetry.
Mm.
Um, but the and this it's a poem that I kind of like, even though it's
You know, like modernist poetry, isn't Robert Frost? Wouldn't Robert Frost be modernist too?
I'm sorry, say again.
Wouldn't Robert Frost be modernist too?
Yeah, but he rhymes more. T.S. Eliot didn't rhyme at all, and I like rhyme.
Oh, you like the rhyme? Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I like rhyme. I like
You know,
rhyming
I
meter.
used to be like that, but then I switched over a
Oh,
little
you
bit.
you you succumb to the dark side of the
I
force.
feel like Walt Whitman, like "Oh Captain, My Captain," and then like "The Learned Astronomer," and like just some of these other ones that are very, I feel like evocative, kind of won me over. Um,
Hmm.
it
All right,
corrupted me.
all right, fine. This I'm just going to give you the first stanza of the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock.
That's Elliot too.
Yeah, I told you. I
Oh,
told you
okay.
we're gonna get Elliot.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
gonna get Elliot, okay? Now, mind you, these aren't my favorite Elliots, just so you know. Let us go then, you and I, when the evening is spread out against the sky, like a patient etherized upon a table. Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask, what is it? Let us go and make our visit. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. That'll learn you.
I love that, honestly.
Well, I will tell you. He has three short poems that I like very much. I call them his Brahmin trio. The three short ones, and they're my favorite of Eliot's, of all
Mm.
Eliot's. So, since I'm not doing my 50-page Ode to Spring, you'll get this. Um,
Okay.
it makes sense on some level. On which one I don't know. The thing is, you've got to bear in mind that he used to make a lot of fun of the Brahmins, from which people he came from. Uh, and the Boston Brahmins, in up until 1933, their chosen newspaper was called the Boston Evening Transcript. It was the Brahmin paper, and of course, only the most refined people would read it. Now, the story goes that there was a murder in a house on Beacon Hill, and it was or something happened, and it was such a big deal that the lady of the house had to admit the press. And so the butler announced, "The newspaperman, madam, and the gentleman from the transcript." And so this is T.S. Eliot and the Boston Evening Transcript. That's the title. The readers of the Boston Evening Transcript sway in the wind like a field of ripe corn. When evening quickens faintly in the street, wakening the appetites of life in some, and to others bringing the Boston Evening Transcript, I mount the steps and ring the bell turning wearily, as one would turn to nod goodbye to Rochefoucauld, if the street were time and he at the end of the street, and I say, Cousin Harriet, here's the Boston Evening Transcript.
That one's
That's
confusing.
because you don't get it.
I don't get it. That's confusing to me.
Basically, he's saying that the readers of the Boston Evening Transcript, Brahmins, are, bringing to some life's passions. The evening comes, bringing to some life's passions, and to others, meaning the Brahmins, the Boston Evening Transcript. And then he goes and he proclaims himself to be part of that, because he picks up the Boston Evening Transcript himself.
I see.
Then the second of these is called Aunt Helen. As I say, I call him his Boston or his Brahmin trio. I don't think anybody else calls him that, but I do. Partly because I can. It goes like so. Aunt Helen. Miss Helen Slingsby was my maiden aunt, and lived in a small house near a fashionable square, cared for by servants to the number of 4. Now when she died, there was silence in heaven, and silence at her end of the street. The shutters were drawn, and the undertaker wiped his feet. He was aware that this sort of thing had occurred before. The dogs were handsomely provided for, but shortly afterwards the parrot died too. The Dresden clock continued ticking on the mantelpiece, and the footman sat upon the dining table, holding the second housemaid on his knees, who had always been so careful while her mistress lived.
I followed that entirely. That was very cohesive, but the deeper aspect of that seems to have eluded me.
Well, his poor Aunt Helen, I mean, she had a very, what we would consider a pleasant and important life. She had 4 servants. Everything was very carefully taken care of. And then she died, and it didn't really matter all that much. It's a terribly sad poem, really. Aunt Helen's passing really didn't mean all that much to the world at large. And lastly, but definitely not leastly, Cousin Nancy. This is a little more exciting to the degree that Brahmins could get exciting. Cousin Nancy. Miss Nancy Ellicott strode across the hills and broke them, rode across the hills and broke them, the barren New England hills, riding the hounds over the cow pasture. Miss Nancy Ellicott smoked and danced all the modern dances, and her aunts were not quite sure how they felt about it, but they knew that it was modern. Upon the glazed shelves kept watch Matthew and Waldo, guardians of the faith, the army of unalterable law. Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thomas Arnold, or Matthew Arnold, rather.
So, some transcendentalist weirdo.
Beyond that, everything fossilized. Everything just. It was those 3 give you a taste of Brahmindom. Doesn't it make you want to dump everything and move to a mansion on Beacon Hill?
No.
And live your life in strict decorum?
I'm very happy in the Garden of Eden here in Southern California.
But imagine that your life were lived according to a sort of empty kind of decorum.
That's a sad thought.
It is. They're very sad poems. And actually, it was from that T.S. Eliot went first into his wild modernist stage, and then discovered Anglicanism and became a Christian. And then not just an Anglican, but a Catholic. And finally a papist Anglo-Catholic, if that wasn't bad enough.
Wow.
That was his answer to the conundrum posed by Brahmindom.
All right, that'll do it for the pre-show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the poetry. But
I hope
you tuned.
Enjoyed Aunt Nancy. Cousin Nancy, Aunt Harriet, Aunt Helen rather, and cousin Harriet with the Boss Evening Transcript. You've all acquired 3 new female relatives.
Yes. So
What? Is it? Don't you want to have Brahmin relatives? Female Brahmin
I didn't
relatives?
ask for this. I didn't ask for these relatives.
Well, you have them now.
You've
In
imposed
fact,
this on us. You're punishing us by imposing these relatives on us now.
I'm not doing anything. And from now on, like when you're thinking, you know what? I'm going to take my wife out just on the spur of the moment to an Italian restaurant. I then want you to stop and say, well, wait a minute. What would Aunt Helen say?
I can guarantee you that's just about never going to happen.
No?
I will never say that. Why would I
What if,
say that? Why would I say such a stupid thing?
well, you might worry about how she might feel that you're leaving. I mean, that you're suddenly dropping everything and taking your wife out to an Italian meal when you
This
don't generally eat at that hour anyway.
this fictional person from this esoteric poem?
Yes. And you should be very much concerned about cousin Nancy as well.
Oh man.
Look,
Okay.
we live in a time and a place. You know, you say that you shouldn't be concerned about imaginary people, right? Is that what you're saying? You're telling me you shouldn't care what imaginary
No,
people think.
no. I said I don't care about this imaginary person that's from that obscure poem.
All right, well, let's take this a step
I,
further.
I don't want to. I don't want to, Charles. I don't
Does
want
it?
to. I wanted to end the show 15 minutes ago, and now I'm stuck here talking about obscure imaginary people with you, and I don't want to do that. And there's nothing I can do to stop.
Well,
Can you
you
make the
just
bad people stop, Charles? I mean, this is like the broader societal thing. It's just you want to just roll up into a ball in a corner and cry because there's nothing you can do.
you
You're
see how you
bullying
are.
me. You're bullying me.
I am not bullying.
This
I'm
sucks.
helping.
This sucks, Charles. All right.
I'm helping.
All right, go on. Let's go down the rabbit hole or take it a step further and blah blah blah.
God. You know, I feel like you've objectified me. I really do. All right. It's like this. Have you or have you not heard everybody jumping up and down about women's rights since Roe v. Wade was knocked out?
Yeah.
Okay. But have you also not heard the Secretary of Health and various other people with big mouths in government who own us saying that they can't define what women are?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you can't define what women are, how can they have rights?
Well,
And if they can have rights, we don't know what they are. How is that different from your Aunt Helen and your cousin Nancy having rights?
no, well, it's like a club. See, like you can't tell me that I'm a Knights of Columbus. I can only decide to join the Knights of Columbus and then become in that exclusive club and enjoy all the benefits of that fraternity.
Yeah, but we can define Knights of Columbus. We can't define women anymore.
No, it's whoever wants to join the exclusive club of women can do so and enjoy the benefits and privileges that come with it.
Yes, but a self-identified woman could not become a Knight of Columbus.
Ooh.
Got
Nowadays,
you there. Yeah, nowadays.
I think there's.
No,
I
no,
think
it hasn't
some.
changed yet. There are no trans members of the Knights of Columbus.
I mean, is that a question though? I mean, like, how do you weed
I'm
that
sure
out?
it will be. I'm
You
sure
know,
it will be.
no, I mean,
shortly, but
it
not
would
yet.
it would have to be right. Like, but I'm just like thinking through my process, and it's like that question isn't on the list. Like, obviously, you have to be a member in good standing in the Catholic faith. Like, that's the big one, right?
But
Like,
you have to be a man. It's a men's organization,
I know, but if you say you're a man, you
and
know,
you're not.
like this is gonna come up. I'm sure this is going to turn into a news headline. Probably now that we're talking about it, like and thinking about it, and the way people are, like there's gonna want to be a trans person that's gonna want to do this, and someone's gonna at some point say no. I think and hope so, at least.
Do we want to bet on Supreme standing up?
Standing up or laying down?
Standing up. No trans in the KFC. Supreme saying we're not taking your guff. We're not taking any chicks who consider themselves men. I'll take the opposite bet either way. If you say yeah, they'll stand up, I'll bet they
I
won't.
don't think they'll stand up. No, I don't think they'll stand up. No, I
All right,
don't.
then I'll bet they will. I'll take the losing bet.
Because with all due respect to the leadership, they've shown me absolutely nothing other than, I mean, I guess the pro life stuff. We do some pro life stuff.
Insurance.
I mean, yeah, it's all about insurance. But honestly, what I keep falling back to is when I have put these expectations on, CEOs or movie producers or whatever, and I always find myself saying, well, why should I have expected them to stand up and to fight the good fight when our Cardinals won't even do it?
Well,
Because it starts with the Cardinals.
As Chaucer put it, if gold should rust, what can poor iron do?
It starts with the church, and if the church won't do it, it's unreasonable to expect that these other organizations will do it. Sorry.
No, you're right, and that's particularly true with the Knights of Columbus. So I'll give you that. But I will tell you this, and this I'll stand by: the Knights of Columbus will never admit Aunt Helen.
They're not going to turn into the Friends of Unity.
Yeah, the Knights of Unity, and then they'd have to be Friends of Unity too, because we're getting away from the whole knighthood thing.
I mean, I think there's some things where it's important for you personally to believe this, and I think this might be one of the things where, like, you can't, it's just important for you to believe that they can't go to that level. In my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm being delusional, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, and that's fine. Delusion is the key to happiness.
Of truth. What?
No, confusion is the guardian of truth.
That's right. Self-delusion is the key to positive thinking.
There we go. All right,
we got that done. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been able to stick with us to the last bit of drivel, get ready for the real show, which is going to be very exciting.